Hi, my name is Joseph Rodriguez, and you may know me from my other YouTube channel where I have over 430,000 subscribers, and I've had that YouTube channel for a while. What I would like to do with this YouTube channel here, and this is the first video, is perhaps I like to try different things, and sometimes I feel exploratory. What I feel like exploring with you is the journey of entrepreneurship, specifically what I have done. And in this video, you'll see a mind map. I'm a fan of mind maps. If you are a viewer of my other channel or a subscriber, you'll know that I enjoy learning using mind maps and teaching via mind maps. So today we're going to talk about how I made over $10 million in revenue in entrepreneurship since I started my journey in 2009. And I did it very lean. And then I also invested in my investment portfolio, which is mainly index funds, nothing fancy, and other very liquid investments, which has resulted in financial freedom. So my story is, prior to going into entrepreneurship full time, I worked 10 years in corporate IT. I worked for a large retailer's IT department in Toronto, Canada. And you may know this company, TJX Companies. They have a number of stores all across the US and Canada. And in Canada, they bought out at a particular point a company called Winners. Winners then opened up HomeSense. So that's actually owned by TJX Companies. So I used to work in the Winners HomeSense head office in Canada back in the days, where I was providing IT work for, let's say, the head office and the warehouses and the organization, IT services. So things like desktop support, wireless networks, if there was a virus on the computer, patching the systems, techie-based stuff, fixing printers, etc. I did that for 10 years. Now, I felt like going into entrepreneurship full time because my intention was to go down the entrepreneurial path, as I was always very fascinated about entrepreneurship. And I felt it was a way that I could bring in more money doing what I love to do, and then eventually get to a point where I have financial freedom, which happened through entrepreneurship. And what ended up happening along the way is I also had so many wonderful life experiences, which was part of my intention. And while my intention wasn't to build big businesses with a lot of teams, and nothing wrong with that, let's say if a particular point a desire arose for me to do that, I certainly would do that. What I felt was most important for me was to take on the opportunity or the challenge of entrepreneurship. And I had a number of challenges along the way. Take on the opportunity / challenge of entrepreneurship, and then create financial freedom for myself, and then open up more doors to what I wanted to do next. And the avenue that I initially chose was an IT business. So in 2009, I left my 10-year corporate career and then started an IT business. Then that business grew to success. And then over the years, after I transitioned from my IT business, because I felt like I no longer wanted to do it, and we're going to go through valuable lessons that I have learned building that business and what I did. I found that there were many entrepreneurs that would reach out to me and say that they would like to build their business my style, which was very lean, solo entrepreneur-based businesses, or maybe now and then a few contractors, which is what I had in my IT business. And they also choose to enjoy travel, wonderful lifestyle, which is what I did over the years. As a matter of fact, when I transitioned from my IT business in 2013, I was traveling around. I lived in Austria for a while. I lived in the US. It was a lot of fun. And during that time, also, what ended up happening was I got into business consulting, because there was a number of people that asked me, a number of businesses that approached me and said, How did you do your sales? Can you help us with that? How did you do your marketing? Can you help us with that? How did you put this operational procedure in place? Or can you help us with this and that in business? And I said, yes. So then started my consulting practice, which grew to success and made up the largest volume of revenue. And one of the things I found is that consulting, when done in a particular way, which we're going to discuss, can be very profitable. It's similar to what I did in my IT business, except in my IT business, what I was doing was I was doing the solution implementation. Now and then I had contractors, they would come in, they would do it, yet I would do it because I really liked doing IT services. And why did I transition away from it was 2013. All of a sudden, I just lost the desire to do it. It's interesting, right? Because 10 years I did corporate IT and I loved what I did. And then when I did my IT business, I love what I did as well. Now I'm doing it for myself, contractors, making more money. Yet what ended up happening was at a particular point, I just lost interest. Because what I found was I was more interested in the business side of things, the innovation, the sales, the marketing, the operations, the finance, the leadership pertaining to business. And I wasn't as interested in the IT services. So while I was doing IT consulting from 2009 to 13, I transitioned from that. I actually took some of my clients and sold it to an IT service provider in Toronto, which allowed me to transition quite profitably. So I started business consulting in 2013, and I also started my other YouTube channel in 2013. My very first video on that YouTube channel was how I was living out of a backpack and working. So I didn't have to do that. I had enough money to get a place and then move on with my life and get a whole bunch of possessions, which is nothing wrong with that. I just chose to go minimal. So I actually got rid of everything in 2013, put some stuff in a backpack and bought a one-way ticket to Austria. My ex-girlfriend at the time, she was Austrian. So I bought a one-way ticket to Austria. And I said, wouldn't it be interesting if I just make a video talking about this experience? And maybe this could turn into something. Maybe I could talk about on my YouTube channel my experiences of traveling while doing business. I thought that would be a cool idea. Now, I didn't know how the YouTube channel was inevitably going to be turning into a business. But that's an interesting thing that happened. I ended up making that video, putting it out there. It got kind of popular. And then I said, what if I talk about books that have been helpful for me in my entrepreneurial journey? So in the earlier stages of my YouTube channel, I was sharing my insights and perspectives from applying the books that have been helpful on my entrepreneurial journey while also further growing, because I find in entrepreneurship, there's always more to learn. And if an entrepreneur chooses to grow, they can continuously grow. They can continuously build a business. For example, I could have scaled that IT business. I had the operations efficiency and process background. And I even had that firm that took over the clients I mentioned earlier. They asked me if I wanted to do some kind of partnership arrangement, a very successful business in Toronto, and grow together, which would have been a very profitable initiative. Yet, I didn't feel like doing it. I was not interested in doing things in a larger scale. I think I'm a very curious entrepreneur. I like to do it up to a particular level, and then maybe I might get involved with something else and then go on to the next thing. Different kinds of entrepreneurs, different styles. That's one of the things I learned is, what's your style? Your style is the best style. Doesn't mean better than my style. Doesn't mean better than another person's style. Their style is the best style. My style is the best style. Your style is the best style. For me personally, I like a lean business, one that I can put in automation systems that runs very lean, that is highly profitable, low overhead, and that later on, if I choose to scale it, I can. So when I teach entrepreneurship, I teach make a very good amount of money per month, have a wonderful lifestyle, and you don't need to spend a lot to have a wonderful lifestyle, and put money aside in investments, and ideally do it as soon as possible. And then what happens is you get the benefit of compound interests, which is what I did. So as mentioned, that's my style of doing things. And I also love working with entrepreneurs. So what ended up happening was in 2013, I also made a video and I tagged someone in there. That video is still on my channel. I'll link in the description to my channel. And the person who I tagged in the video invited me to do consulting. His name is Jeff Moore, in his seafood business, and he also knows a lot of people in California. So that ended up kicking off the consulting practice. And not only from everyone that he introduced me to, but also my other contacts from my IT business, my consulting practice began to grow. As a matter of fact, that very first year that I had my YouTube channel, under a few hundred subscribers, it was already a six-figure business, which is really cool because what happens is once you learn entrepreneurship, once you learn the fundamentals of it and you succeed in business, you prove it in equation, we find that the entrepreneur is able to build their next business, third business, fourth business, etc., get involved with consulting, and because they understand experientially how it works, they have the reference experience, they can build a business again, generally a lot easier. That's what I found, and a lot quicker. So I started my YouTube channel, that started to grow, and then eventually what ended up happening was 2014, 15. So I'm making videos on the side whenever I feel like doing it. The channel started to grow. It went from a few hundred subscribers to a few thousand subscribers to 10,000 to 20,000, and that turned into a full-fledged business. As a matter of fact, in 2019, I began to focus exclusively on the initiatives of my YouTube channel, which includes my 5 programs that I created for entrepreneurs based on my experience, business consulting deals that came from the channel. I have my group coaching and mastermind service. I have done some partnerships, joint ventures from my YouTube channel. So the bulk of the revenue came from business consulting and my YouTube channel. So now let's talk about how I did it and nuances. So when I built my IT business from 2009 to 13, I offered the following in various combinations that resulted in it. So we'll explore the details. My way of thinking is this: how much money do I want to make per month? And at that time, my goal was $10,000 a month. Initially, it was $10,000 a month. And the way I did it is I said, how many packages do I need to sell in order to make $10,000 a month? If I have 40 hours a week that I would like to dedicate to my business, if I have 2 contractors and each of them are available for 20 hours each, how can I allocate that time so that it equates $10,000 a month, and then $15,000 a month, and then $20,000 a month, etc.? How much do we bill the client hourly? And can we offer packages? And then also, can we upsell them on products or services that doesn't take our time to fulfill on, yet we can get a percentage on that deal from vendors, etc. A great example would be one time I got brought into one of my clients' site for a whole office infrastructure revamp. They wanted a whole new infrastructure put in with fiber optics, cabling was required, racks to connect everything together were required to be put in, routers, switches, etc. Now, I didn't do fiber optic cables, but we did have a company that I partnered with who would do that. So they were brought in as part of the deal, and they gave us a percentage of the revenues they generated from that deal. So while I was there performing the services and taking care of whatever, I had a number of contractors that I brought in that gave me a percentage of the revenues. So we could see then This is beyond exchanging time for money. Let's say a person were to build a business and they were to exchange time for money. Depending on how much they charge per hour, they can make six figures a year, 500,000 a year, a million a year plus. They can do that. There are consultants that do that. And at times I have charged a high amount as well. Yet consider that if a person incorporates that plus some additional revenue, then they'll bring in more money. And even though they're putting in an hour, let's say, and let's just say they were charging $150 an hour. If they were charging $150 an hour, but they brought in a firm to do some work for that day who billed out at, let's say, $2,000 to put that work in place, and then they gave you $200. You came in to do 2 hours, so you made $300, and they gave you $200 off that deal. You actually made $500 for those 2 hours. Now, that's a very simple example, but that is how I was able to do it through IT services. And I had a number of these partnership arrangements, cable companies, IT firms as contractors that I would bill out to the particular client, and they would do the work. And I did this not just for IT services. Sometimes I would do it with web designers. I would do this with those that would build websites. So it was very interesting how I had it all set up. And what could sound very chaotic is actually systematized and simplified. And it's built on that foundation. As I mentioned, the goal was initially $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month and then $20,000 a month. It's essentially different kinds of configurations to make that amount per month. And as mentioned, it doesn't just need to come from if you're providing IT services and you bill blocks of time or hourly. It doesn't need to just come from hourly. That is how I was able to grow it very creatively. And what's great about that too is then you can actually do less hours. And then let's say you have, and I have done this, I had an IT firm that performed managed services for a client, and they gave me recurring revenues of that client's deal for a percentage of the recurring revenue that they were collecting from the client for the whole year. I was getting checks sent to me for doing nothing, and all I did was broker the deal. Now, what was interesting as well is other opportunities opened up while performing IT services, 3 of which I would like to zone in on over here. Number 1 is this Open Bravo point of sale system. I ended up running into one of my friends from high school, and he mentioned that him and a business partner were opening up a restaurant in Toronto. It's a restaurant slash nightclub slash lounge. And he said, why don't you come meet my business partner and see if there's things that you could do for us? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I offer IT services for companies in Toronto that can't afford to bring a full IT professional in full time to sit in and provide the IT services. And this was mainly for desktop supports, wireless networks, if they had a virus, if the printer wasn't working, etc. What does a restaurant need as far as IT services? The only thing I could think of was the point of sale systems that they have. For example, they may have a cash register in the start of or in the front of the location, and if somebody places an order for a food item, then they punch it into the system and it gets sent over to the kitchen and it prints out, and then they prepare the food, etc. And maybe that point of sale system has inventory. But I wasn't really interested in that, and I didn't know much about it. So I went to that particular location. We had a conversation, and then he said, yeah, we need this point of sale system. So I called up one of my mentors who, when I was in corporate, they had an IT business and they resolved this big wireless issue that we were having in the warehouses. Him and I became friends, and his business partner, we became friends. I considered them to be a mentor. I called him up and he said, you can find open source software. There's open source software available, and you could create packages, customize these open source softwares, and then sell it. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So we found a software called Open Bravo, an open source point of sale system. And again, I've never done this before, but yet I had the IT background. There was some programming involved, yet I had a few friends that were programmers, so I figured, I could work something out. And long story short, I ended up building this point of sale system for this particular bar slash restaurant slash nightclub with the printers in the kitchen, and it would take inventory and it would keep track of sales. And if somebody ordered a particular drink, etc., I would send the receipt to the bar so they could make it, and a receipt to the kitchen if they ordered food, and then it would make it according to order. So I created it for them, and I did it in exchange for a place to stay at a very discounted rate, let's say downtown Toronto, because I found that that is the place to be if I was looking to acquire more clients, as there's many offices in downtown Toronto. So I did that for an exchange, but then he also knew a lot of people. So he started referring me to other restaurants and other locations that were looking for point of sale systems, including retail locations. So that's what I did. We added that as another revenue stream. So now I'm providing Open Bravo point of sale systems customized for restaurants, retail, clothing stores, providing IT services. And what's interesting is the point of sale system clients would refer IT service clients to me, because all these entrepreneurs, business owners are connected with each other. And so I'm getting more referrals, which is then when I discovered that referrals was my style of growing my business. If I could focus more on referrals, my IT business will grow. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And also another need arose, which is to build websites. So these restaurants, these offices, these retail locations were also looking for websites. And so I started doing it, and I would partner with someone and she would do it. WordPress websites, very easy to do. So another revenue stream. So now we're making revenue of IT services, point of sale systems, and also WordPress websites. Now, the first couple years in business were really hard. And why they were really hard was because I was focusing on things that were not driving the revenue. It seems like a very simple thing, but it may often be overlooked in entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur may be more focused on the business cards and, let's say, non-revenue generating activities. The revenue generating activities essentially is marketing and sales. And even through the marketing and sales, like as just mentioned, you can come up with additional products and services. So the first couple of years, I wasn't focusing as much on product and services. And part of it was great to have freedom. So I was hanging around in Toronto, and it was great to have a lot of freedom, because when I worked in the corporate career, I was on call. I worked a lot of hours. So having freedom and flexibility, I kind of, in the first year or so, enjoyed my freedom and did a bunch of things. I didn't have a lot of money saved to go into the business, so I had to ensure that I was allocating the resources so I wouldn't run out of money. But let's just say for the first while, one could say I was playing around and slacking off a little bit, and which is totally fine. But then at a particular point, I also realized that I was allocating a lot of time to meetings and doing a whole bunch of other things that weren't driving the business forward, again, the sales and revenue side. And I started to put more emphasis on sales and marketing. I started to set quotas for myself. For example, 5 new prospects today. My goal today is to start 5 new conversations with prospects. It could be calling up somebody that was referred to me by one of my clients. It could be meeting up with one of my clients and their other entrepreneur friends so I can get to know them. It could be reaching out to a business, cold calling, etc. 5 a day. When I set a quota like that, the business started to grow. When I started to focus more on the sales side, the business started to grow. And that makes sense because, generally speaking, the more time in sales presentations, making offers, etc., the more clients you're going to get. And not only that, my consultative selling skills improve. My ability to sell improved. And what was also very interesting, this might be considered very nonlinear. One of my friends was teaching speed reading in Toronto. He was teaching speed reading. I had this idea that if I teach speed reading, or if I just engage in as many opportunities to improve my public speaking, my sales, my business would grow. And so my friend was teaching speed reading in Toronto. And then one day he said to me that he no longer wanted to do it. And I said, would they be interested in if I did it? So he contacted the company, which was based out of Chicago, Iris Reading. The founder is Paul Novak. He contacted him and he said, well, I found somebody that's interested in teaching speed reading. Now, the thing is, I'm running an IT business. So one might ask the question, why are you teaching speed reading? Well, I thought of it as an additional revenue source. And I thought, you know what? I was very fascinated by doing online business. And my IT business was, a lot of it was offline. It was going on to client sites. It was doing the work. It was very offline based, let's say. I was also fascinated. And I figured at a particular point, I would steer the business more into online or get involved with something that was more online. And I really like teaching as well. And in 2005, I learned how to speed read, and it helped me tremendously. So what ended up happening was I ended up meeting the founder, Paul Novak, over a call. We talked, and he said, yeah, sure, teach the speed reading workshops. So not only did I get paid for it, I got to practice public speaking skills. But then what ended up happening, interestingly, is as I would teach these workshops, and I would teach them on Saturdays and Sundays in Toronto. So I'm making money doing it. And one could say, again, it's outside of the scope of IT business or point of sale systems or WordPress websites. Why are you doing that? What's IT about that? And directly, yes, we can acknowledge that it is not an IT service. Yet, what was fascinating was I would get referrals from it. So I would get revenue and I would get referrals. And by revenue, I mean I would get income, let's say. I would get income that comes in from teaching the workshops. And I ended up also getting IT clients because there were business owners that would attend these workshops. I would do them in Toronto Saturdays and Sundays, sometimes 50 or 100 people per day, 4 or 5 hours. It was a lot of fun. I got to practice my public speaking skills. I get to teach speed reading, which was very helpful for me. I then acknowledged that the practice again and again and again of developing my ability to communicate and becoming more effective would be helpful for my IT business, which it did improve. I noticed that the sales would go up. And I would also get that added benefit with every now and then, I would meet people that would bring me and my contractors in, to do IT services, as they were IT, let's say, IT professionals that were there that, let's say, benefited from bringing either IT firms to handle the workload that they had. Also, business owners were there, etc. It was a great place to meet new contacts to acquire clients. Now, what I had found and what I had learned from my initial IT business was the following. And I segment entrepreneurship accordingly, building that to success, which was again done through offering services, partnerships, referrals. What I had learned is that segmenting entrepreneurship in the following ways can be very helpful: innovation, marketing, sales, finances, operations, and leadership. When I started to really refine how I went about my entrepreneurship journey, rather than today I'm an entrepreneur, just do a bunch of random things, but get really focused on what is growing the business started to grow and succeed. So innovation essentially was coming up with products and services that are beneficial. We'll get more into this a little later, but high level now. Coming up with products and services as a result of having sales conversations. This is done through consultative sales. Through the sales presentations, not only were there opportunities to offer what I had available, but there was also ideas, innovative ideas that would come up, such as, for example, the point of sale system and other nuances of the IT services that we offer. So by focusing on innovation, ensuring that we could say enough time, enough energy, enough resources, enough of the opportunity of what we have is allocated towards innovation, then we come up with fresh, profitable ideas that actually work and that people actually are looking for, whether it's business to business, business to consumer. Now, marketing, I'm a fan of direct response marketing. Most of my marketing for my IT business, I would say almost all of it, was referrals and partnerships. As a matter of fact, in my IT business, we did a deal with this steel company up north, and we did IT services for the steel company. When they brought me in at the time, I hired my first contractor, and then we brought us in. While we were providing the IT services, there was an accountant there, and the accountant really liked the way that we were performing the services. She also had a need for IT in her office that she had, and she brought us in. So we ended up doing work for her organization as well. And then she started referring business to us. So that's when I came to the realization. I said, you know what? There are very direct sources of referrals that are, why I say direct, because let's say if I go around randomly asking people for referrals, I may get a referral here or there. But if I contact someone that has direct access to the kind of clients I'm looking for, and I could work a deal with them, then I have a very direct connection to those leads. So we know that accountants, business accountants, they tend to have, if they have their own business, multiple clients who are business owners, who are entrepreneurs. And I imagine that they can benefit from IT services. We could say they all need IT services or some IT services. Maybe they already have IT firms, but they don't want to work with those IT firms any longer. They're not getting the kind of service they're looking for. So I recognize that. And it was that point, as simple as it may seem, that was at one point, and maybe it doesn't seem simple, but it was a very powerful realization for me at that point. I said, you know what? If I just work with people for referrals very closely, maybe work out partnerships, maybe we could work something out that have access to the kind of clients I'm looking for, then my business can grow. And as a matter of fact, it did. There was a particular point where I did not have the operations, the infrastructure, the SOPs in place to be able to handle the amount of business that she was sending to me. So I actually told her at a particular point, can you slow down on the referrals? So that was my marketing. Now there's different kinds of marketing. There is ads, you could do referrals, you could create social media content. In my IT business, I built it primarily through referrals. I didn't run any ads, at least I don't remember doing so, but it was mainly through referrals or word of mouth. And then being very strategic about it by working very closely with strategic relationships, we could say. So I would hang out with her, we would go for dinner, I got invited over to her house, we would talk about things, we would have a wonderful relationship, and she would gladly refer business to me. I would refer business to her as well. We had a great relationship, and that is when I really understood practically from experience the power of referral marketing. Now, sales essentially, she could refer all kinds of business to me. But if I don't call up the prospect, if I don't engage in a meaningful conversation, a consultative selling conversation with the prospect, then I'm not going to acquire the client. So getting better and refined in consultative sales also helped me, because then the volume of the conversion volume increased. In other words, what I mean by that is, let's say I had 5 prospects. As I improve my consultative selling skills, maybe 1 out of 5 of them prior to improving my skills, and the skills continue to get better, would become a client. What then it would turn to is 2 out of 5 would become a client, or 3 out of 5 would become a client. And not just become a client, but you would find ways of offering more value in which then they would pay more, and thus the value of the sale increased, and the value that we were offering the prospects would increase, and then we would deliver on it. Now, another thing that I found about sales, marketing, and innovation is that I discovered that a few of my clients were generating most of the revenue. 80-20 principle. We can say, generally speaking, 20% of the clients were producing 80% of the revenue. I actually did one time sit down and map it all out, and actually saw that that was the case. Then I also discovered that 20% of the clients that were producing 80% of the revenue actually had more IT needs. So I really went deep, and then the revenues continued to grow, and the business started to grow. And that's when I said, okay, I feel like I've got a great grasp on this entrepreneurship thing. By focusing on sales, marketing, and innovation, I can achieve my numbers. And sure enough, the money started pouring in, let's say. Now, what was very helpful was to organize my finances, because then, let's say, I could have gotten to the point, as mentioned, I like very lean operations. I could have gotten to the point where I would have started spending, thinking that I was investing back in the business, but really it wasn't generating anything that was growing the business. It was just speculation. So what I had learned was to keep track of my finances, my records, the conversion, and be very, we could say, disciplined doing it. And that's what I teach entrepreneurs as well who have succeeded. Those that have applied it, they have succeeded consistently, let's say. They have grown their business consistently because they're also tracking their finances. And this part of the finance is just numbers in general. They're tracking, as mentioned earlier, 5 prospecting sessions a day. How many of them convert? Because then we can ask very educated questions. We could say, how can we refine our marketing so we can get more qualified leads? How can we refine our sales so we can acquire more clients from those qualified leads? Because maybe the leads are very good. It's just that the conversations we're having with them are not translating into deals. What can be done about that? So tracking is very important. Now, as mentioned, I got really good at cranking up the sales. As a matter of fact, that IT company that I mentioned that acquired some of my clients, that's what they wanted to partner with me on. They said, Joseph, you've gotten so good at sales, you're so good at bringing in the money, that we would like you to be involved with us in that regard. And you don't have to do any of these other things. You could just bring in sales and we could work revenue splits, profit sharing, etc. But my heart wasn't there in IT. But what I did at a particular point, and I was doing it from the beginning because, as mentioned, I do come from a process and operations background. I don't know if I mentioned this in the start of the video, but when I did 10 years at corporate IT, I was involved with, for many of those years, in logistics IT. So processes, warehouse management systems, operations were a big part of the IT installation, IT infrastructure that we're putting in place to support all that. So in order to support all of that effectively, I benefited greatly from learning about processes and systems. And I also learned a lot of things internally while I was in corporate. I learned management. I learned how to manage projects. All these soft skills I had learned. So what ended up happening was, when the money started coming in more so, in order to support and deliver on the clients' needs and what they ask for consistently, I like how Napoleon Hill said it in Think and Grow Rich: quality, quantity, and spirit of service. In order to do it consistently, I put in operations, and that could include SOPs, that could include hiring people, automation, delegation, optimization, some shape or form in order to deliver. But you know what? I wasn't as interested in doing it with IT. And so, even though, let's say, it's a staple of what I teach now, in my other businesses, I do it. But then at a particular point, as mentioned, I was no longer interested in doing it for my own business in IT. And that's when I transitioned. But I also realized that it was an important point. So that's what I teach: innovation, sales, marketing, finance, operation, and then also leadership. I'm leading myself, I'm leading people, etc. So I consolidated entrepreneurship into these 6 areas. And then over the years, and when I moved into business consulting, when I went into my YouTube channel, I ensured that I was focused in a very focused way, not in a force-based way, but focused way, going about entrepreneurship in a way that, let's say, focuses on rapid business growth, what is really bringing in the money, what is really providing value to the marketplace, etc. And that is why, as mentioned earlier, when I started the consulting practice and I put out that YouTube video, my first year having my YouTube channel, it was a 6-figure year. Because what was going on behind the scenes were all these things put into place that were learned and refined from my IT business. So you learn a lot. Actually, I could say, because some people say it, that maybe in the first few years you'll learn the most. Although I believe that you can consistently learn every day, and that's what I did. Every day, till this day, and more so, I continue to learn. So as mentioned, even though I'm at a point right now of financial freedom, I love entrepreneurship. So I'm still involved with entrepreneurship deals, although now it is, let's say, a more stringent criteria. I like to ensure that it's fun, flow-based, whereas in the earlier stages, it was more, look, we got to bring in the money. So that's one of the benefits of doing it this way that I mentioned, where you aim to get the revenues up to, let's say, maybe the first is $10,000 a month, then $15,000 a month, $20,000 a month, and then also keep your overheads low. And by the way, if you're interested in the nuances of this, I did create 5 programs on my website, Online Training for Entrepreneurs, that gets into the depths of this based on my experience. I'll link in the description to it. And I include finance spreadsheets, etc., that I use, that I have built over the years. But generally speaking, the earlier stages, I learned a lot. And then I got to a point where I said, do I want to now grow this to a level beyond this? I said, no, I want to do business consulting. I want to put this into businesses because I really love to do it. What I loved the most was the conversations with the people, and their teams can put it in place. So if they would like me to bring, and that's actually what I did at a particular point in business consulting, was I would assemble little teams that I would bring in case an organization wanted a team to put something in place, whether it be in the innovation side, marketing side, sales, finance, operations, or leadership. So having had this experience and continuously refining this experience, and my experiences continue to multiply as I had more experience, and I get more wisdom from those experiences, then what happened was my business consulting practice continued to grow. And as mentioned, having learned really fast, we could say from a crash course of entrepreneurship, going in full time and being dedicated, I was able to get it to 6 figures within the first year and then scale it and then do it my way. And by that, I mean not bring on more people. Not that I have a problem bringing on more people, but I just like to, as I mentioned earlier, increase the revenues, have a wonderful lifestyle, and then invest a large chunk of that into growing a business, new initiatives, etc. What I did was actually a very, what one could say, simple thing that anyone can do, which is I invested in index funds and stocks, and really I was only looking for 8 or 9% return to achieve my goals. And that's what I did. I just kept investing, and then it compounded, and that contributed to financial freedom. So we could say that it's not just about making the $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month. It's what you do with that. It's how much you keep with that and invest. Because what happens eventually is, depending on your investments and depending on how much you've invested, the return on investment you get per month can be 10, 20, 30, 40,000. And then you don't have to do what it is you're doing in entrepreneurship. And that is what I teach. So again, very lean, very lean. So what happened was after I transitioned, I went into business consulting, investments continued to grow. I started to make more money and I had even more fun. I was having fun in my IT business, but now I'm traveling because I could do this remotely. I lived in Austria. I lived in California. As a matter of fact, what a great opportunity I had in California. I, in the earlier stages of my entrepreneurship, used to study the work of Jay Abraham. He's one of my favorite copywriters, direct response marketers, consultative sales professionals, and facilitators of deals, joint ventures. And just listening to him is very inspiring to me. His expansive business experience and wisdom, and how many businesses he had helped, inspired me tremendously in business consulting. One could say I was aiming to, step into the same kind of direction, although my style of way that Jay was doing things, because he had also started his consulting practice built on the foundation of his success. Now, what was fascinating is that eventually, at a particular point, I had the opportunity. I moved to California. The Abraham Group, run by Jay Abraham's company, sponsored my TN visa to do consulting in the States, and I got to live in California. I had wonderful experiences. So actually 2015, 16, I wasn't really doing much. I was making good money. The investments were continuing to grow, and I wasn't really doing much. But then at a particular point, I said, I feel like I really love investing more time in entrepreneurship because that's where I feel more alive. And then I did it in 2017. I don't know if you watched my YouTube channel, the other one, but I mentioned I make flow a priority. And part of making flow a priority was realizing where I was experiencing flow more so, and that was through entrepreneurship initiatives. And again, it could be anything from innovation, sales, marketing, finance, operation, leadership, a lot of it, let's say, on the consulting side. Now, how did I grow my consulting practice? Well, referrals. I was getting a lot of referrals. I would orchestrate referrals. I would travel. I would hang out. I'd get more and more referrals. I would do wonderful work for people and their businesses. They would refer people to me, and it would continue to grow. How did the money come in? It came in through consulting, hourly block times, one-on-one session, packages, consulting, which at times included revenue splits, percentage on profit, which was wonderful. And many times, the profits from the percentage on profit or the revenue splits was way higher, as mentioned earlier, how I did it with my IT business, than the hourly rates that I was billing. So there were times, let's say, I would go into deals where I was charging far less than other consultants would charge on the front end, but I would make way more on the back end, which is what Jay would talk about as well. And that's why it was such an honor to do stuff with the Abraham Group. So then partnerships. As mentioned earlier, I did stuff with Iris Reading. Well, Paul and I became great friends. We joint ventured and created programs together. We did partnership deals. I would bring people to the workshops. I even had a website called speedreadingzone.com that would generate leads, and then they would become clients, and I would get clients of Iris Reading, and then I would get a percentage on that. I did a whole bunch of joint venture partnerships. Stories, again, in my entrepreneurial program, if you're a student of that, link is in the description. And as mentioned, I'm happy to share more nuances, specificities, stories in upcoming videos specifically geared towards entrepreneurship and how I did 10 million revenue in entrepreneurship, over 10 million in revenue in entrepreneurship thus far. And I imagine that continuing to climb, and I'm happy to explore with you and get into specific details from my experience. I've been doing this for many years now, full-time since 2009, and I have a lot of stories and a lot of experiences, and I would love to share with you. If you would like to know more specific questions, you can put in the comment section. So what ended up happening was with Iris Reading, we did partnerships, we created programs, and more money started coming in from affiliate deals, partnership deals, the consulting arrangements. And this got, as mentioned, at a particular point, I wasn't really doing as much, but then I started stepping on the gas, let's say, because I realized it was a flow enhancer, and then more money started pouring in. And as mentioned, I kept it within the original theme, which is very lean. make very good amount of money, whatever that may be, and then invest the rest. Put the money aside, invest the rest. I was still having a wonderful time. As a matter of fact, I leased a Porsche when I was in Turo, actually. I did a long-term deal on Turo with somebody with their Porsche while I was in California. So you can still have a wonderful time. You can enjoy your life. Yet I always teach entrepreneurs, put money aside and invest in the long term. You can invest back in your business. You can also invest in other things, which some might consider as, even though it's not, let's say, core to the entrepreneurial venture, stock market and index funds, and depending on what you do, and I'm not going to give particular investment advice because some might prefer this investment, real estate, etc. I choose the industries that I have expertise in, and it has done over the course compounding effect. Compounding effect is quite powerful. If you study, we could talk about that upcoming if you would like, compounding effect. That's enough right there. If you start soon enough to become financially free, even if you don't make a lot in entrepreneurship. One doesn't need to make, let's say, 50 million, 100 million, even 4 or 5 million, let's say, even $1 million or even a few $100,000 if made earlier enough on the side while you're working full-time through entrepreneurship, invested over the course, can add up with compounding interest. Now, as mentioned, I also started for fun, you could say, my YouTube channel, not this one, but my other one, in 2013. From that YouTube channel, there was AdSense. There was even at times where I was making $20,000 a month off AdSense at a particular point, which was quite cool. Over the course, yes. And then I also created my training programs and a website, onlinetrainingforentrepreneurs.com, through the channel, one-on-one coaching, consulting, group Zoom, in-person sessions, partnerships. I actually have a mastermind and group coaching service called Flow-Based Prosperity, partnerships, joint ventures. And from the channel, I made a considerable amount of revenue, many millions of dollars. Now, consider this for a moment. I mentioned that primarily for me, the revenue sources came through referrals, or that was my marketing, primarily with my IT business and also business consulting. From my YouTube channel is when I discovered the power of YouTube and social media. I never did this earlier here, so you don't have to do social media. You could do referrals. There's other ways of growing your business. I have a lot of experience in referrals, and now I have a lot of experience in social media. And the thing about social media, the way I did it, was I didn't do anything gimmicky. I didn't try to hack the algorithm. I just consistently posted interesting content that I felt inspired to talk about and that people can benefit greatly from it, sharing my experiences, my insights, perspectives. And by the way, I also have a podcast where I take the audios from my YouTube channel and put in the podcast. And I just did that consistently over the years. Consistency, consistency, consistency. In the earlier stages, once in a while I made a video, but then I committed to 1 video a week, and then I committed to 2 videos a week, and now we're doing 3 videos a week. And over the course of the years, I switched into different topics. There was, in the earlier stages, talking more about the entrepreneurial books. Then I got really interested in talking about more on metaphysics, as metaphysics has always been an interesting subject that I was interested in since I read Think and Grow Rich in 2004. Then I started talking about flow. I started talking about Wu Wei. I just talk about whatever I feel like talking about on my YouTube channel. And that turned into a full-fledged business, which, by the way, I have many friends that the same thing happened with them. Their businesses has been a result of their TikTok or YouTube channel clients as well. YouTube channel, Instagram, TikTok, talking about things that they genuinely love to do. And then when they combine that by learning some core business skills, innovation, marketing, sales, finance, operation, leadership, they turn that into a very successful business. Can be 6 figures, can be 7 figures and above. It's really up to them. And then it's not, I don't see it as, I want to make more money, I want to make more money. As mentioned, you don't really need to make as much provided that you invest strategically. And you can also have a wonderful lifestyle by being very strategic with your money. And what's the most rewarding for me in all of this is the thousands of people that I have helped through my YouTube channel. I've received hundreds of emails of people that were in really tough situations. Some were in prison, applied what I shared in my channel, my expertise, and they have very successful lives now. They own their own homes, some have their own businesses. I have created a number of millionaires through my channel who have emailed me and directly said it. I even have a few case studies I'll link in the description that we did where I worked with people to build their businesses, and they make a considerable amount per month, hundreds of thousands a month. So again, and when I say hundreds of thousands a month, even if I say a million a month, $10 million, et cetera, if I throw these big numbers, my style of entrepreneurship is always lean, high profit, low overhead, minimal resources, and then allocated in investments to grow compounding. So that's my style. I don't really have a flashy lifestyle, although I do have a nice car. I live downtown Toronto, and I do at now and then live in places like, for example, I love to snowboard. So I'll go actually with an Airbnb up north and stay there for 3-4 months. A few years ago, I stayed there for a whole year, snowboarding, having fun. And if you understand how you can expense and you have a good accountant, what happens is even that, a portion of that, and sometimes in particular cases, a large percentage of that, if not all of it, can be written off. So there are a lot of benefits in entrepreneurship, becoming an entrepreneur and going about entrepreneurship. And as mentioned, what I'm sharing with you right now, this is my style. We can get into so much nuances. I can get into nuances about consulting, joint ventures, partnerships. Leave comments below. Everywhere I go, I meet entrepreneurs, and I love talking about and discuss my experiences and also learn from the entrepreneurs. Because as mentioned, through entrepreneurship, you can never stop learning, and it's always fun. Okay, so now that we've gone into a great amount of depth, this video is getting quite extensive here. We're about almost an hour into it or so. Let's talk about my style of entrepreneurship and get into even more nuances. So as mentioned, my style has always been increase monthly net income. So let's say I was to get involved with a new business, or I was starting from scratch. I would set a monthly goal. That's what I did before, and it worked perfectly. I may say $10,000 a month, or $20,000 a month, $30,000 a month, whatever you'd like. That's the monthly income goal. If it's your first business, maybe you could start with 2K or 5K or 10K. If you're a seasoned entrepreneur and you've been steadily pulling in, let's say $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, and it's a new business, you could set it at that. Whatever feels, let's say, flow-based and challenged, but not overwhelming, that's how I like to do it. And then whatever business I'm involved with, I like to go as direct to the revenue side right from the beginning as possible. That's what I did with my consulting practice, and that's why I grew quite quick. As mentioned in the earlier stages of my IT business, nothing wrong with that. It was part of the experience. I didn't dedicate as much time on the revenue side. So what do I mean by revenue side? These are revenue enhancing, revenue generating activities. Number one, generating qualified visitors over to your website, product, services. Number two, generating qualified leads from those qualified visitors. And number three, acquiring the clients, client acquisition, sales, consultative sales. I recommend studying consultative sales. A great book to read is Spin Selling by Neil Rackham. And then number four, engage in ongoing business from clients. As mentioned earlier, 80-20 principle, 20% of my clients from my IT business were producing more of the revenues than my other clients. So by engaging in even more business with them, the business continued to grow. So let's go into depth, a particular degree of depth, because as mentioned, we can go really deep with each of these. Generating qualified visitors. So there are many places that you can generate qualified visitors over to your websites. If you have a website with your product or service, you can do it through social media, forums, groups. You can run ads offline. You could do events and send people there. So what I'm interested in, what I teach, is qualified visitors. So not just anyone, those that would be more likely to do business with you. So for example, if you're offering a service, a cleaning service, and you have a website that says, this is my price, this is how much we charge, etc. So your website's up with the pricing on there. Now, in order to bring qualified visitors to the website, you may think, where do people who would want cleaning services be? Maybe a condo. So this pops up in my mind. Maybe I might go to a condo and leave little flyers or work a deal with the management. We're talking about referrals, and say, is there a way that I could present what my offer is, which is cleaning services, to the people in the condo here, if I, let's say, offer my cleaning services to the building or your office of the building here for free or something like that. And it's interesting because I have done stuff like this and it does work, where you offer free service to someone who has access to people that could benefit from your service. Now, they may say yes to this, they may not. That's just a rough idea. Or let's say you have IT services. Let's use the IT services. You could say, go up to accountants and say, well, you and I can have a conversation about IT services optimization. I normally charge X amount for a consult, yet I'm happy to explore with you for free. Just an exploratory conversation. I'm not going to try and forcefully sell you something. If there is a match, then gladly I'll offer it to you. Yet we can explore your website, your IT, technology, AI, whatever you'd like. You can have a conversation because I've got a lot of experience in this area. Would you like to meet up for coffee, or would you like me to drive over to where you are, pick you up, and we can go for lunch or something like that? And what happens is, if they have a wonderful conversation with you, they may be open to referring people over to your website or to your social media or to call you directly. Now, you could do this also, as mentioned, with social media. So if you have a product or service, consider then making videos talking about your experiences of applying the product or service in a way that will be interesting for the audience. You may talk about, for example, with my YouTube channel, I talk about my experiences with metaphysics, my experiences applying books, particular marketing strategies that have worked really well for me, stories. And then people see it and they say, you know what? This is someone that I would like to work with. Does he have a website? So they go to the description, they click over to the website. Oh, he offers a mastermind service. And so they may register for that mastermind service or buy one of the programs. Now, generating qualified leads from the qualified visitors is also sometimes not as hands-off as, let's say, we hope they click over to our website. But it can be more involved through putting in an opt-in form in which then they go to an email list. Maybe they get, like, for example, with my primary YouTube channel, the main one that has over 400 and something thousand subscribers. For a period of time, I would do my videos on mind maps, and if they were interested in a copy of the mind map, the link was in the description, they would opt in and get the mind map. And these are people that are genuinely interested also in what I was talking about. So in order to call them out and ask them if they would like to do business with me, I remember a while back when I put out a very simple email. Actually, I mentioned one of my clients who is a case study. He actually found me through this email. I'll link in the description of that case study video. He found me through this email that I wrote back in 2018. It was a very simple email. I said, I'm looking for 5 coaching clients. If you're interested, reply back to this email. That is calling them out. Maybe there are leads on this list, yet if I never call them out, if I never ask them if they're interested in doing business with me in some shape or form, they might never reach out. And that's what he said to me. He's like, wow, Joseph rarely puts out offers. And he's right. I rarely put out offers, which goes to show you that, and this may be another topic, but if you provide great information, you're very helpful, you're genuinely interested in the success of people, you can get a considerable business build without doing a lot of advertising or promoting. Now, not to say that you should not advertise or promote, but what I have found is I didn't do a lot of like heavy, pushy kind of marketing, and I would still grow my businesses. So he was right. I didn't put out too many offers, but when I did, people would take me up on it. And so I sent that email out. He ended up taking me up on that offer. He became a client acquisition. So how did he become a client? Well, he actually just signed up for the coaching service. I just sent him a link. He paid for 5 sessions and we started coaching. Now, sometimes it's helpful to maybe send an email out that says, would you be interested in working with me? You could book a session with me and we can explore. That is an exploratory session or a conversation we could do on Zoom. And that's a sales presentation or conversation. And for me, what I found to be very effective is, and I learned this from my IT business and consulting, etc., the more conversational I am and the more genuinely helpful I am. Again, you can get into the nuances of consultative selling. I recommend doing so. But generally, the more helpful I am, the more I am willing to really get into what's going on with them, take detailed notes as to what kind of solution I could provide to them, and even provide solutions without even them paying with me. They're just genuinely caring about the person. The more genuinely caring we could be, the higher the conversion is. So these are conversations that, although we can call them sales calls or sales presentation, it doesn't have that salesy kind of vibe in it. Again, you get better at doing these kinds of presentations where they're very conversational, very flow-based conversational, yet they're high converting through the practice. Again, repetition, 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 which is why I'm so glad back in the days that I set that quota of 5 prospects a day. I even remember during that time when I was learning how to sell, I would go to bookstores when I was out and about, and I would sell people books in the bookstore. I'm not getting anything out of selling people books in the bookstore. For example, there's a wonderful book called Influence, Psychology of Persuasion. I would walk up to people in the bookstore and I'd say, you know what's a book that's very interesting that indicates why we buy what we buy? Like, for example, you're picking up this book right now. Do you know why you're picking up this book? And they're like, what's the book? And I would talk about my experiences with Influence, Psychology, Persuasion. They would get interested in the book and they would actually go and buy the book. So they would be in the fiction section at times, and then they would walk over with me over to the business section and buy that book because they were genuinely curious about it. So I would do stuff like that all over the place. I would continuously practice my sales skills. And number 4, engage in ongoing business from existing clients. See, there's so much opportunity when a client buys from you and they have a wonderful experience and you deliver wonderful service. They're more likely, we find, to take recommendations for additional products and services that you can make and sell, or you could partner with someone they can make and sell, or you could refer and make a percentage on that deal. That is what I did in my IT business. That is what I do in any initiatives that come from my YouTube channel. That's what I also did in business consulting, which contributed to a large amount of that $10 million revenue. I would say a huge chunk, I haven't gone into depth with the math, but a huge chunk of it was from engaging in ongoing business from existing clients. Sometimes clients become business partners. Clients start referring people to you and become business partners. So there's all these revenue streams that are generated. So that's why I like to focus on first when I'm building a business, and that is what I teach. Focus on these initiatives first, the revenue enhancing side. And as you're focusing on it, without neglecting, ensure that your finances are kept in check, that the measurements are there, key performance indicators, etc. Through the sales presentations, through the marketing, you'll come up with innovative ideas that are designed to enhance the revenues, grow your revenues, and then ensure that you're cultivating leadership, and we can get into the nuances of that leadership of yourself and people in upcoming videos. And ensure that you are putting in operation, systems, processes. But what I found is to not focus too much on the operations side while neglecting the sales and marketing side. Generally what we see in that, if a person does that or an entrepreneur does that or a business does that, is they don't bring in the revenues. And then they burn through their capital, whether it be bootstrap or investor capital, etc. So that's what I like to focus on, increase monthly net income. Now, My style of doing business, as mentioned, is not in a stress, frustrating way. It's in a flow based way. So I like to enjoy a wonderful lifestyle while I'm building a business. Rejuvenation time, doing some activities that you love to do. And granted, maybe in the earlier stages, you invest a lot of time into your business, but consider also taking care of yourself. And then as you're bringing in these monthly revenues and they're increasing, I recommend keeping your overhead low so that you can invest right in the beginning into other kinds of investments, whether it be index funds, crypto, whatever you'd like, for long term wealth. If you do it, what I have seen is some of my entrepreneur friends actually make more money than I do, but they have a lower net worth than me. Why is it? Why is it that? Because, and they even say this to me, they start creating all these expenses. And while they're having a lot of fun, I'm also having a lot of fun. Yet they're not, let's say, looking at those expenses and see how they could do those things in a more effective way. For example, let's say I bought that Porsche in California and sold it. Well, sometimes cars go up in value, but that particular one would have lost a lot of value. So I said it would be great to do it to Turo. I was able to write it off as it was part of a business trip. I still got to enjoy a Porsche. Look, I have my car right now. I bought it, and it's a BMW, and I paid cash for it. Some might say, why did you do that? Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. One doesn't have to be, let's say, super granular about this. But if we can keep reducing expenses and being more and more intelligent with our money into consideration, and as mentioned, you could take this really far. My accountant, for example, if you have a great accountant, she gives me so many tips that actually work, and I integrate them, and they actually work to do a lot of things when it comes to reducing expenses, working with taxes in an intelligent way. She gives me so many things that work, but there's so much more. So, wonderful lifestyle. And maybe in the earlier stages, which is why I did my IT business, I kept my overhead really low, which is totally fine. And then later on, as the revenue started to grow, I moved to another place. I started to eat out more. In the earlier stages, I was eating at home, totally fine. And then if you invest earlier, either back into your business and that grows, or other kinds of investments, and it doesn't have to be a high return, just the power of compounding interest. And that's why this helps, increasing the monthly net income so you can invest more. You invest and then have a higher net worth, and then also income from that, or return on investment that can get to a point, as it did with me, where it replaces your net, or you make more from that than the net you take home from your business, whatever you pay yourself. So all of this can be done in a flow-based way, fun, joyous way, which is why I talk about flow and Wu Wei on my primary channel. Again, I'll link in the description to that channel. Now we can get into more discussion if you would like. I was actually considering expanding upon innovation, marketing, sales, finance, operation, leadership, but I feel that it would be best to leave that for the book and maybe upcoming videos. And I did prepare it on the mind map here. If you would like a copy of this mind map to see what I expanded upon and follow along with this, I recommend listening to this video a handful of times, taking notes, and apply this information. And if you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to the mind map. I'll also link in that same link when you opt in. When the book is ready, I will let you know. We will expand upon it in there. And as mentioned, if you would like more exploration on whatever we talked about here, if you have any questions, leave a comment under this video and we will talk soon. So thank you very much for watching. I trust you've enjoyed today's video and you found it to be very helpful. This is from personal experience of doing this with myself. If you would like to get in contact with me, I'll also link to my website. I appreciate you very much and we will talk soon. Take care.